Ladies and gents, great to see you here. It's amazing to come from Australia, 10,000 kilometres away, and feel so much part of a community that cares about software quality. And I've always felt that it was never about technology, it was always about people. And that's what I love about this profession. That's why I'm so passionate about it. That's why I've blabbed on at so many conferences. And it's good to know that, you know, in Australia we've got the same passions as you guys have here. I've got a quick disclaimer I've got to run being a public servant, so let me just run that for you. Do we have any? Do we have any volume on this thing or not? I spent hours recording this disclaimer as fast as I could possibly talk so that I could say anything and get away with it, even with the boss watching, but the disclaimer's not playing. I guess you get the general idea, okay? So it's not the department's fault, it's not my fault, anything I say could be just totally random. Okay, so you don't blame me, but I hope you find it of interest anyway. So I'm from a country called Australia, and we hang around down here, just underneath Asia. And I'm actually from a city called Canberra. Does anyone know what Canberra is? Capital of Australia. Everyone thinks it's Sydney or Melbourne, but it's Canberra. There was a fight between Sydney and Melbourne about who should be the capital in early 1900s, and they both lost and they chucked it in the middle somewhere, more or less. So that's why we're there. So I work for a government department called FAXIA. We're similar to Social Security, I guess, in the United States, in that, you know, we provide payments that support the unemployed, the handicapped, people with disabilities, our Indigenous population, and so on. So a department I'm very proud to be part of. And we also spend 25%, I think, roughly, of the taxpayers' money is allocated by our department. So quite a big chunk. So in that context, testing is really important because there's a lot of money involved. And there's people involved who might have trouble using computer systems. In that context, we have a captive audience because they can't go somewhere else. We're the only department that has those systems and that pays those grants. But when I was thinking about this last night, I thought, when we talk about a captive audience, really many of our IT users are captive because, you know, with major software products, after the investment's been made in the product and in the training, it's unlikely that you would then go out and buy a competitor's product, even if there were some really, really annoying issues. So I think to a large extent, our audiences are captive, and I think for that reason we have a big responsibility to try and make sure that the systems are, you know, as easy to use and error-free as we can possibly make them. I'm proud to say that our department recently adopted, the public service in Australia recently adopted the WCAG 2.0 guidelines for web content accessibility. And our department was one of the lead agencies pushing that through, which allows, of course, people with disabilities to access web content more easily, which is a fantastic initiative and provides design guidelines for websites where they can be evaluated. Let me tell you about the Aussie character, Aussie national character. Working in Australia, it's interesting in quality because we have this really, really laid-back, optimistic attitude of she'll be right and no worries, mate. And so much so that we even have a cap that you can buy, the no worries cap. Now, the no worries cap's great, except if it's your job to generate worries. And everyone in the room's wearing their no worries cap, except you. It's like when you turn up to the fancy dress party in the clown's costume and find out it wasn't a fancy dress party. So our job is then they're sitting there with these caps and we have to get rid of them. We're going to give you worries because it's our job to give you worries. Of course, these worries are based on evidence and facts. They're not just because we're trying to annoy people. Also, we have this characteristic of trying to laugh at ourselves. You're not taking ourselves too seriously. You've got a bird that flies around, a Kookaburra, which actually laughs. This one here. I'll show you a better picture of it later on. But with a bird that flies around and laughs, how can you be too serious? And certainly in the pressured world of testing and IT, I think that's an attitude that works well. That's a close-up of the cap for the people at the back. The IT project landscape, it is not a relaxing, stress-free place to hang out, really, is it? And one of the quotes is this one here. Technology is dominated by those who manage what they don't understand. And as an ex-IT manager, I totally agree. Of course we don't understand it. You couldn't possibly. I mean, even the people working closer to the coalface have trouble understanding it. So we're already in a context of enormous uncertainty and risk, right from the start. And look, I'm not suggesting for a minute that other people are stupid outside testing or anything. I mean, it's just hard. It just is. And we're there to support them, which I think is a fantastic role. We're making time and budget estimates. We have really no idea how long it's going to take and how much it's going to cost, and we don't even know what we're building. We just can't. I would argue that IT projects are the ultimate extreme sport. And I reckon that, going in a raft into a raging river or jumping off some cliffs or even on that sled thing, that's nothing compared to an IT project. They have some measure of control. Most of the time, we're just taking our best guess and working like mad to try and make sure it happens. Or is it like this? And you've got no lifelines left and there's no 50-50. What do you do? Do a release? Yeah, okay. Chuck it in. Chuck it in. We can always apologise afterwards. So the fears, the fear factor in IT projects are sort of fears that a manager might have and some of the fears that we might have as well. Is it going to work? Will I keep my job? What will my peers think? There's the humiliation factor if it doesn't work. Will it go in on time? Can I meet my budget? Will it damage my performance review? Do I have enough resources? Is my career finished? So pretty tough. Pretty tough. And when working in a context of fear, there have to be some people who are the calm, rational ones. And of course, that's us. Because we can take a nice, detached, rational attitude. We have plenty of time to test. We're not squeezed for time. We have enormous resources, infinite patience, good humour. And so we can really help these people stress less. If only it was so. But that's the general intention anyway. And got a great creature called the Tasmanian Devil, so I just thought I'd morph that manager into the Tasmanian Devil. He has a wonderful hand puppet that I've got too. Tasmanian devils are in danger of extinction right now. They're from Tasmania. There's only I think, a few thousand left, but they've got a tumour disease right now. What we like about these hand puppets is we can use them to simulate different personalities. Australian animal hand puppets don't offend anyone. Oh, I didn't say you were the Tasmanian Devil, boss. That was the other manager. So it allows us to communicate in new and innovative ways. There's 6 main fears that are identified commonly that people worry about. Failure, obviously. Exposure, which is sort of the humiliation of people finding out that you don't really know what you're doing when you've been faking it all along. The embarrassment that causes. Obviously, conflict is a big part of fear. Rejection. No one loves me, and loss, could even be your job or your promotional opportunities. So there's real fears there, and there's real reasons to be concerned. Deming said, banish fear, if only we could. But we can certainly try, and we can certainly try and make it easier for our users, which to me is the main mission of testing. Looking at a testing role, how's our job different? Well, we in a sense focus on failure. We don't really focus on failure. We're trying to achieve success, but as part of that, we've got to go down the failure path and be professional pessimists and all that sort of thing. Our ultimate mission, what is it? Is it to provide information? Is it to protect people from themselves? Is it to protect our end users? You might have different thoughts on that depending on the context in which you're working. But certainly for me, it's always been the end user. There's layers between us and the end user, many layers between us and the end users, and many different competing priorities between us and the end user. But if the end user has a good experience, I certainly think we've done our job. I asked at one conference whether it's a job or a vocation, because a vocation normally implies a lot of self-sacrifice, commitment, long hours. It can be thankless. I don't know if testing's like that. I guess it depends where you are. But I imagine a few people have put in the odd weekend or two, or the odd late night, and maybe had a bit of strife from the family when crawling back at midnight. But it's something that I think you can feel passionate about, which I really like. Are we the quality cops? Now, I've read a lot of papers, a lot of presentations arguing yes and no. I say, because I spent the money on my police hat, and it was a significant investment, and because I got my rubber band gun through airport security, I say we are the quality cops, most definitely, and I've got this little thing here. And the best way that I can ensure that people test properly is with my rubber band gun and my little loud hailer. And I can walk up and down the developers and I can say, make sure you unit test, make sure you unit test, complete your unit tests, do more testing please, choose better test cases. So if they don't comply, I shoot the rubber band. Oh wow, how good's that? So I would suggest everyone should get, they're quite inexpensive, these pieces of equipment, because part of our mission is quality cop, and I think we can never ever totally abdicate that, because if we aren't the quality cops, who is? No one is. It's that diffusion of responsibility thing where then no one takes responsibility. So the lucky bands that I have there, that pile, that's probably enough for about 5 minutes worth of unit testing, then we ran out. So always make sure you have enough lucky bands because you'll need them. But we have more roles than that. In fact, when I thought about it last night, I thought these people, our employers are getting a bargain. They really are, an absolute bargain. I reckon we should charge 4 times as much because not only are we the quality cops, but we've got this detective role as well. We're trying to, investigate problems. Scientist role in analysing things. Reporter, we're reporting, what's happening. Psychiatrist. I don't know if that's for us or for them. We got the doctor diagnosing things, and this here is meant to be like a diplomat or a politician, okay? So we've got relationships that we have to maintain. So it is so much more than just a code monkey role, just churning out applications. It's massive. That means we sometimes end up like that as we're submitting our test report, and of course that's something that we don't want to do. And part of what I want to talk about is how we can avoid that. Then this question of who are we serving? Who's really in charge of testing? Is it the people paying our checks? Maybe it is to some degree. Is it the broader organisation? Is it the project manager, the developers, the shareholders, the taxpayer in my case? We certainly have multiple clients. And I would never want to suggest that those people aren't important. Of course they're critically important, even if the end user is where our passions really lie. And this is an end user being chased by his computer. Now, is that the end user experience? One thing that was really, really interesting for me when I was working in the customs department in Australia was actually going out to see how the end user operates, because if you haven't seen it, you may be shocked with how they're using your IT systems, because we have these certain notions that they're using it in exactly the way they were designed, but they're not. And so I went to the airport into the control room, and we've got these things called flight tables where they have to put up all the flights, and as people come through the customs primary line, they're attached to these flights, to keep track of who's coming and going. And they were just putting a new flight in when I was there, and I watched 2 customs officers, like one on this side and one on that side, on a terminal each, putting in this certain flight, then they went 3, 2, 1, and they both pressed the enter key at the same time. And I said, why on earth did you do that for? And they said, oh, because it doesn't update otherwise. Now, the update problem had nothing to do with that, nothing to do with it technologically. But they developed this ritual that if they go 3, 2, 1, click, so you would need 2 officers instead of 1 to update 1 entry on a flight table. So we doubled our staff costs because we had to have these 2 people. It's like, what is it, on the nuclear missiles where you need 2 people with the key or something, isn't it? Thankfully it was just, people coming through the airport. So I think, going out to the users, if you can, is something I would really recommend, because you'll be surprised by what you learn. The other thing is, it makes them love you more, and we want to be loved. If anyone needs to be loved, it's us. We get bashed around so much. If at least the users are happy to see me, even if the project manager isn't, that's a good start. So I would highly recommend trying to contact the users if you're in a position to do that. This concerns me. So this is, the end result of an encounter with a computer. Now, we've had much worse. We have had deaths, we've had injuries, we've had people being maimed, people being irradiated, space probes crashing, buildings collapsing. You know all the major stories. So there have been big disasters that happen. What concerns me is the less visible aspects of problems with computers, the frustration factor. You know, the amount of years it takes off people's lives when they can't get the thing to work. And, you know, we've all seen them struggle. When I was teaching computing, I was always amazed. I'd walk up to the student and they'd have a question. I'd look at their problem and I'd think, which idiot designed this system? Because sometimes the system worked in a completely counterintuitive way, which made it hard to learn. So, I mean, people struggle constantly. One thing I want to emphasise is that I'm not suggesting at all in this that we're the only people who care about quality, and I'm convinced that everyone cares about quality. What I think is that we have the luxury to care about it a little bit more because we're perhaps driven by other factors a little bit less. And I think that's a fantastic position to be in, and that's why I love this career. Usability testing. Always do it, seriously, always do it. We bought a product called Moray 3, and this is not particularly a plug for Moray 3, although it is a good product. And it is so easy. I've got it running on this laptop. I can get someone to use the application. It records their face and also their screen interactions side by side, and I can get some data. Now, yes, strictly speaking, you should be doing user-centered design. You should be doing all those tests as you're developing, but you learn a lot even just by running them afterwards. You know, it is still worth running them because it costs bugger all, you know, especially if you go out to the user site with a laptop. It costs you almost nothing. They love you for it, and, you know, we pick up valuable insights, even just into how they use the computer system. So I'd really encourage, with the low cost of usability testing, once upon a time you had to have a lab worth like $100,000 with old-fashioned video cameras. Now you just need like a $1,000 laptop. You know, so if you're able to promote usability testing in your organisation, I'd certainly encourage you to do that. Cassandra, a fantastic mythical figure. Don't know if you've heard about Cassandra, but basically what happened was this god called Apollo had the hots for her, and eventually she dropped him as a Facebook friend and didn't return his tweets anymore. And he got upset. He wasn't happy. He wasn't a happy chap. And he had given her a gift. In sucking up to Cassandra, he had given her the gift of prophecy, so she would always prophesize correctly with 100% certainty. I wish we could be like that in testing, but maybe one day. And that was great. But then, of course, when he got slighted, instead of taking the gift away, he put a curse on her that no one would believe her. So she was always correct, but nobody would ever believe her. Sometimes I feel our role is like Cassandra. There's even a complex in psychology called the Cassandra Complex. And I sometimes wonder, is that part of our job description? I'm not sure. But it certainly sounds familiar. So one of the questions is, what can we do to avoid being seen as the Cassandras of the IT world? Criticism, one of our main jobs, one of the more unpleasant parts of the job. So there's some scenes there of people being criticised in various contexts, and of course, it leaves a lasting impression on a lot of us. Whether it's, being ostracised, by the cool gang at school or whatever, right up to being unsuccessful on American Idol or on that British cooking show. So it's understandable that people have got this morbid fear of criticism. It's their work. They've put their heart and soul into it. And that's where we have to invest a bit of extra emotional energy, perhaps compared to other roles, in trying to minimise the impact of criticism on those people. And public criticism, of course, is what people particularly stress about. So if you're going to criticise, please don't do it in public. Of course, our job description is criticism, to tell somebody they're wrong. Tell somebody they're wrong. I got a typo on that, sorry about that. Should have gone through QA with this one, shouldn't I? Basically, telling people they're wrong officially is called testing. And there's a whole bunch of vehicles that can be used for public criticism that you might not think of. And of course, defect reports are one of them, but it can also go through a range of different components, leaving the person very unhappy. I have noticed that our computers now are less critical. I crawled into my shed. Every Australian's got a shed. Every Australian bloke has got a shed. It's part of the Australian tradition to have a shed in the backyard. When I used to do a radio show, people used to ring in for requests. They were always calling from the shed. So being an Aussie bloke, I have a shed. In my shed, I have a computing history dating right back to the Apple IIe of computers I've stored that I haven't had the heart to take to the tip because each one of them cost about $4,000 at the time. And I think, my shed, it's got computer equipment worth $30,000. It's now worth like $100 or something. But anyway, I thought to myself that over time, the beeps the computers have made have changed. And I thought the beeping changes are very interesting. So actually, there's all these redback spiders all over the machines, that almost bit me, these poisonous Australian spiders. But I managed to get these computers running again just so I could record the beeps for you to look at how they've changed over time. So we have MS-DOS. Don't know if anyone here is old enough to remember MS-DOS, but it was basically the system that made Microsoft wealthy at the start. And MS-DOS used to do that. And then, so that beep was quite annoying because beep, beep, you do a beep, beep, and people used to really stress out. And you'd watch people making mistakes on computer systems in public, and it was just a humiliation of that beep, beep, it was so aggressive. So then, and that was kind of like a kick up the butt. It was like, that's how I see that beep. And then Windows 98 came along, and it was this one. And that's more like a bit of a slap on the wrist, really, isn't it? It's kind of like that, isn't it? So it's a more gentle rebuke than the beep. And then we upgraded to Windows XP, and things were getting even more kind. Oh, that doesn't sound like a mistake at all. It's like a chirpy little welcome, isn't it? It's like, I love you. So that to me is like just a tap on the shoulder. But the ultimate, Windows 7, when I got my Windows 7 computer, I thought, oh, this is just gorgeous. So Windows 7, I enjoy making mistakes. I make the mistakes just to hear this. Oh, that's like a hug, isn't it? Isn't that the most beautiful sound? And it makes me smile. So, so when we criticise people, I guess my feeling is that we should criticise them in the Windows 7 way, like that. Okay, it'll make them happy. Giving criticism, of course, yeah, we have the nice noise, and then we don't do it in public. I'm sure you've all heard of the kiss sandwich, which is basically we say something really nice and something really nasty and something really nice, and the example is your screen layout looks great. Pity it crashes when you press this key, but I'm sure you'll be able to fix it. You're very talented. And so, as testing professionals, this is something we need to be good at. Of course, we never personalise anything because that really upsets people. The words that annoy me the most in the whole world that need to be killed off from this language is "don't be defensive." Because "don't be defensive," what does "don't be defensive" say? It says, I'm superior to you, you're an idiot, I'm so superior I can psychoanalyse you, and what you're talking is just rubbish. Why don't they just tell me to rack off, At least that'd be more honest. So when I hear "don't be defensive," it just makes my blood boil, because, I might have missed a mistake, we missed an error or something, and I try to explain why. Oh, because that system doesn't actually integrate with that. Don't be defensive! Sorry, can I finish my explanation? Because you don't learn anything. And likewise, if we're going to developers, and they start explaining, we never say "don't be defensive." We actually want to find out why, because there may be improvements that we can make that rely on that explanation. So it's totally ridiculous to dismiss it. When you criticise, obviously make sure they're okay, and it's really important for us to admit our mistakes as well, because it makes us more human, and it reduces the risk that we'll be beautiful, that will be perceived as antagonistic towards them. Got a couple of major advocacy roles, and the third one might surprise you. User advocacy, pretty obvious. Bug advocacy means someone has got to make sure the bugs get fixed. And again, just like the quality police, if we don't do it, who's going to do it? Really important that we fight for the bugs that we have captured. But developer advocacy. For us to draw closer to the developers, we need to fight for them sometimes too, because sometimes, very occasionally, they're actually under-resourced, and they're actually overworked, and they're tired, and they're stressed. And we're in a unique position if we actually press the quality button and we say that we believe quality is suffering because developers, say are overworked or understaffed, we can actually fight on their side, which is a wonderful way of us actually building a relationship with them. Testing is obviously not just a technical job. There's an organisation involved in most cases, unless you're working by yourself. And we need to know about that. Has anyone heard of a man called Machiavelli? Machiavelli is a controversial figure. So he wrote a book called The Prince, which talks about succeeding in politics, basically. He was a public servant, just like me, but that's where the similarity ends. And no one really knows to this day whether he was an evil man or a good man who was, writing about evil things. But he has come up with a number of techniques, some of which are very useful, even for achieving the sort of laudable objectives that we are all trying to promote. There's obviously a way of working called Machiavellianism named after him, which has been derided quite a lot. Now, I'm not advocating Machiavellianism, even though I can't say it, so I certainly can't advocate it. So don't go back and say, oh, this guy from Australia, I think his name was Tom, said that we should use all these cloak and dagger techniques. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that we need to be politically aware. That's all I'm saying. And one way of doing that, and of course, never be two-faced. Mapping the organisation. So we have a certain organisational structure. And do those links really represent the power in the organisation? They may not. So one suggestion I did read is that we then basically augment that chart with relationships. So here we've got Bluey is a cousin of Sheila, and Snowy plays rugby with Hugo, Tez disagrees with Sydney, and Talisha got promoted over Bazza, and Kylie teaches trombone to the son of Keza. So I've got some relationships worked out there, so that when we're then negotiating later on, it might be useful to know which of those people in the organisation would be likely allies. And someone said, hide this under your bed and all that. I don't think we even need to go to the trouble of actually drawing the chart, but I think we need to be aware of what relationships exist. Connecting with the organisation, the tentacle tester. So I think this idea of having our feelers into as many areas of the organisation as possible can really pay dividends. Because we then have friends through the organisation that can help our cause. I joined the departmental choir. I can't sing at all, and I probably really stuffed the choir's Christmas performance by joining. But I did find out a lot about the perceptions of IT that people outside the IT department had, just informally. And that was really, really useful feedback, working in IT, for things that we could possibly improve or needed to pay attention to. There's this horrible word in the language called gossip, and I don't think we should ever call it gossip. It is informal, organisational communication. Okay, we have to banish gossip. Gossip has too much emotional baggage behind it, nasty, backstabbing, vindictive and all that. No. What we're trying to do is gather information outside the normal channels. And it's very important for us to do that, because otherwise we don't know what's really going on in the organisation. Now, gossip doesn't always have to be, this thing here doesn't have to always be negative. We can actually promote positive things, through the informal network. Like, if there's been a major achievement in testing, for example, or if someone's worked really hard, that could be passed through the informal network if it hasn't been given official recognition, which could really bolster up that person. To patch into the network, of course, you need to contribute. You can't just lurk in the gossip, in the informal communication network. You do need to contribute some. So as long as it's not too vindictive, it's a bit of a quid pro quo thing. As long as you can put in some, you'll get some back out. Now, negotiation. All these relationships that we build ultimately lead us into a more powerful negotiating position, which we need as quality professionals. Now, I've got a little clip here, a bit of Australian wisdom here on how to conduct a negotiation in relation to finances.
You got a light, buddy?
Yeah, sure, kid. There you go.
And your wallet.
Nick, give him your wallet.
What for?
He's got a knife.
That's not a knife. That's a knife.
That's from the film Crocodile Dundee, big Australian movie starring Paul Hogan. And I'm not suggesting that we take concealed weapons into our implementation meetings at all. But sometimes having the more powerful negotiating position can actually help you win. And having the bigger knife really means having done the research to actually understand what's going on, got the evidence, we've talked to enough people that we've got support on site. It's always nice to build that support base before the actual meeting. I think often in meetings, the dynamics change, there's people sort of running it and other ones can't contribute and so on, the quiet ones left out and so on. So it's good to do that groundwork. And then we can get some good results for the organisation. Delivering bad news. Now, this is really funny, but for some reason, even when bad news is correct, no one ever thanks you for the bad news. And it kind of annoys me. I've written many, many letters of complaint to companies, for errors they've had, and problems they've got. And they've sent me some free gifts occasionally. But normally they're not happy. Normally I get some sort of narky email back, thanks for telling me that our website's down, in a very sarcastic sort of way. And there's this interesting analogy about a family going out into the Australian bush, for a picnic, and they come across two farmers. And the first farmer says, oh, it'll be fine, it'll be a sunny day. And the second farmer says, it looks like rain. Now, understandably, the family is going to like the first farmer better because he said something positive. So that's a given. What's interesting is that when it then rains, they still like the first farmer better, even though he was wrong. So telling people sweet lies can actually have you liked more than telling them the ugly truth. It's a hard one. I guess my answer to that analogy would be if that one there said, yeah, it looks like rain, but I've got some plastic garbage bags you can use as ponchos, and gave those to the family, if we had some sort of solution for them, then maybe we could turn it around and win back their love. But I mean, it's intrinsically wrong that the person who predicts correctly is not liked. Do people want to hear the truth? You can't handle the truth, or whatever it is in that movie. Sometimes they don't. Because I have no recollection of that event, or I have no recollection of being told that. There's always a good out when the project fails. So therefore, to avoid hiding from the truth, we use multiple communication channels. Email, so we have a documentary record, obviously our bug tracking system, tell a few other people, and so on and so on. We've got to make sure that that message gets through, even if they don't want to hear it. Now, of course, people hear things differently, and I've actually modified this famous Larson cartoon about what we say to dogs. And you've probably seen it, so we say a whole bunch of stuff to dogs. Oh, Ginger, I've had it, you stay out of the garbage, understand. All the dog hears is blah, 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 Ginger, because that's the only word it knows. So when I adapt that to a conversation with a project manager from a tester, it becomes this. So what we say to project managers, we've discovered another 6 SEV1s and it's unlikely we'll meet our release date. They hear blah, 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 we'll meet our release date. So it's very important when you're phrasing these sort of comments that that you get the order exactly right, and that you also follow up with an email where it can't be denied. One of the best ways of learning, I don't know if you guys have watched the Columbo series, which was a long time ago, but what I liked about Lieutenant Columbo was that he kind of pretended to be like a bit dopey, and he's sort of always scratching his head, and he just keeps asking questions and more questions. The nice thing about questioning is that it's not that threatening, really. Especially if they're asked in a sort of non-judgmental, kind way. And certainly I think one way for us to contribute to the organisation is to question, as opposed to accusing. Creating a positive vibe. Do testing teams need a public relations team? I don't reckon we're going to get one in a real hurry, so I reckon we would have to keep our PR roll up. It'd be nice, but probably something that won't happen in a hurry. So then we've tried various PR things in our department, like when our new test lab opened, we had an item that said our new test lab's opened. And that was a nice non-controversial story. And I have a photo here of some of my staff. They're all in the test lab. They're in a very sort of servile position, bending down and stuff. So, we don't want to appear too arrogant, don't want to take the photo sort of looking down the camera. So a very humble team. The problem is that there's a lot of stuff that we can't actually publicise. And I was thinking of things like this. So if the testing used was something like this, right, test team finds 100th bug, or if it was this, or if it was this, it may cause some antagonism with our clients, even though it may be totally true. So our management's really good. And if they're watching this on YouTube, hi boss, love you all. But But basically, there's some things we just can't report. I mean, our management's good in the sense that they always thank the testers for the contribution, but the contribution can only ever be expressed in a very general sense. It can never get down to these specifics. I mean, these would be major, major achievements normally, because we've actually saved the organisation. But they're things that we can't really, when these systems got in, it's not something we can really accept an award for. So communication's a bit of a trick. We've used some unconventional techniques to communicate, and one of them was this video that we created to show people why testing's important. Medicare pays payments, the doctor's bills, usually about $30.
Oh, I'm not very well. My hip's stopped.
Oh.
I can hardly walk.
Well, that's no good.
Yes, it's bad.
Okay. Have you got your Medicare card and your claim there today?
I certainly have.
Thank you very much. Now, I just need you to sign there for your money, thank you. Now, there's your money. I'll just put it together for you. There you go.
Are you sure that that's the correct amount?
Well, that's not actually the full amount. That's all the cash I have in the branch, but the rest of the benefit will be coming in a cheque in the post in about 2 weeks.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, are you sure?
Yes, that's definitely the correct amount. As the system is telling me, that is the correct benefit you're getting back today. Here's your card. Have a wonderful day.
I will now. Thank you.
It's okay. Bye-bye.
That was done by one of our test managers and a Medicare staff officer one afternoon in 15 minutes without a script, and allowed us to promote testing to the organisation in a different way. These days that's all quite passé with all the video that we do. Impression management. So when the boss asks, how's testing, don't say, fine, thanks. Because unfortunately, fine, thanks is a common answer. In Australia, when people say, g'day, how are you? Our answer is fine, thanks. And that's sort of morphed into the testing response of fine, thanks. Look, fine, thanks is good, but it doesn't show that you're very involved in the work or that you're very in touch with it. So the answer to how's testing going is always that we would, show them something or invite them to have a look at what we're doing or explain what we're doing. One thing I've seen used successfully, which concerns me a bit, is this particular trick here. So when they get asked, let's see if I can get this to work. So when some people get asked, how's testing going, or how are you testing, or what are you doing, they say, oh, what the? Sorry, let's see if this.
We always follow best practice.
So this is like the emergency thing that you break the glass.
We always follow best practice.
Right, and it becomes like a fob off.
We always follow best practice.
It's like it's on the intranet. Best practice, and it's on the intranet. What does it mean? We know it's not on the intranet, but we know they'll never find it. And we know that best practice is just a load of waffle. But it sounds impressive because we're following it. And it's best, so it must be good. So I think we really owe our users some better feedback than that, and our managers. After conferences, to promote ourselves, is anyone doing a summary session back at work? What did you do on the conference? What points did you pick up? Did anyone grab a few free gifts to take back? It makes them love you when you bring a few free gifts back. It's the best way to get staff morale up in a cost-effective manner. Very worth doing and very good to promote ourselves. Some special contributions of testers. Now, I know that every keynote has to have an impressive-looking graph, and when I was in my room last night trying to prepare these slides, I thought, I haven't got one. But damn it, I had Excel, so I was able to create one. I was able to create, to give me credibility, just being a humble public servant with no books, the project motivation graph. So basically what I've done is I've sort of plotted, the percentage of motivation in the project against the phase of the project, sort of using a waterfall type model. And so what we're finding is, when the things in planning is a bit of motivation, analysis, there's more motivation, then design, sort of starting to step up development. and the percentage here is 100%. So what happens is, as we head towards implementation, our motivation level is at 200%. We are sleeping at work. We're there night and day trying to get this thing ready for implementation. You are totally wrecked. The kids have left, the wife's off with someone else, our life's destroyed, because we're at this 200% motivation. But as soon as the system goes in, it's kind of like, and motivation drops, pretty much back to zero. And as shown by the incontrovertible evidence of this graph, it's something that we as testers can contribute to, because what happens is post-implementation review, next time, whatever, recommendations, So I've seen a lot of, I think you guys don't call them post-implementation reviews, you call them retrospectives or something, but the retrospectives often end up in some big filing cabinet with bats coming out that no one ever actions, and we don't learn about improving our processes from it. The outstanding defects that get fixed in the next release, does that next release ever happen? Some of those may be significant faults, okay, but they get forgotten in the euphoria of actually getting something in. I think, again, that's where we have a role to play. We're unique too in organisations because often we are the only people who understand the systems. I've noticed in a lot of departments now, the IT people are coming and going, but the testing group remains more or less intact. So when people actually want to know how the system works, they actually ring the testing people, which I think is a really undervalued and fantastic contribution that we can make. We also could take a stronger lead in error messages. I notice error messages are particularly bad in most cases, badly worded, not checked, not consistent, grammatically wrong, don't provide information about what to do to get rid of the condition and so on. Satisfaction surveys of users, that's something we could push. Collecting help desk data, is anyone feeding the help desk data back into the project? Now these are all things that have been talked about in the industry, but I often wonder if anyone really takes carriage of it, and whether we, in raising ourselves above just, sort of mechanical testing, can make that sort of part of our future direction. So I got this error message last night on my own computer. It just said, you can't connect before register an available network. So it's got a grammatical error. I had stuck a little stick into the computer, a little comm stick, a little mobile broadband communication stick in. I can't connect before register an available network. So it doesn't tell me how to do that. And then it's got a redial button. I don't even have a dial on the stick. Do I have to find a public phone and start dialing or something? It's like, hello? And then there's sort of famous ones on the internet, like keyboard not responding, please press any key to continue, and an error occurred while creating an error report. What do you say? How do these things get through? When I flew over here with a certain airline, which will remain nameless, I found that my headphones weren't working. The sound was only coming through one ear. So being a typical tester, I investigated. And I could have just said to the stewardess, give me another set of headphones. But maybe it wasn't the headphones. By actually reversing them the other way, I was able to see that the ear then changed, so I then knew it wasn't the headphones. And I could have done further tests to find out if it was the video that was the problem and so on. But the thing is, I think as testers, where there are simple tests that we can do to provide more information, I think it's really great if we do them. It's not relevant in all contexts or appropriate, but where we can provide more, I think that value add where we can be more specific is fantastic. Metrics are a bit dangerous, as we all know. We know that there's going to be a natural, irresistible human temptation to optimise numbers. Right? So when we provide numbers, because they can be optimised, there'll be a temptation to do that. So for example, if bug counts are used, and they always suggest that we don't use bug counts because we can artificially inflate them by reporting trivial bugs, there's a danger there. A safer metric is probably coverage, because at least coverage we have some control over, over what percentage of the work we've done. But it's a slippery slope, obviously, if you start reporting metrics that could then later on be optimised by someone who doesn't have the in-depth understanding of testing that we do. Relationship building, getting out among the users, asking how you can help them. Never say these words, they never seem to work. I told you so. So it's like, Johnny, don't poke the echidna, you'll get hurt. Johnny, nah, she'll be right, Dad. Nah, told you so. Does Johnny say, thanks, Dad, I'll listen to you next time? No. Just walks away. And it seems that with age, that reaction doesn't change. We still get that from people. So it doesn't work. But we can do the subtle I told you so. Like, for example, if we provide a solution at the same time as we do the I told you so. So we can say, oh, I've actually got a solution to this, which kind of implies an I told you so, if we've done it in advance. Documenting our sign-offs in the PIR is another place where we can do the I told you so very subtly. Other communication methods we can use, so we use these puppets. And Tasmanian Devil. If we want to simulate a situation, with an aggressive person, we can do this. So this guy would say, what do you mean you're halving our testing time? Because he's an aggro creature. Or the kangaroo. Kangaroo's sort of a cheerful and easygoing nature. Okay, so just hops around, just kind of oh yeah, better have a think about that, so it doesn't get too upset. The other puppets that we use is the Koala Bear. Koala bears tend to spend most of their life sleeping. So if you want a really sort of relaxed, nonchalant creature, it's kind of like, oh yeah, whatever. And then finally, the Kookaburra, this beautiful bird here. Half our testing time. So if we want to act out interactions, I suggest everyone invest in some Australian animals. And that way, you're not offending anyone because you're not saying who the person is, and you can simulate interactions. Not only that, but you can actually model yourself on these characters when you're interacting. So, if you're sending someone in to speak to the developers and there's, some major thing he's upset about, in certain situations you might say, go the Tas Devil, But in other cases you might say, well, you stuffed up again. Or sort of, oh, can I find out a bit more about that error? And the other great Australian symbol I'd recommend, if code comes back to test more than 3 times, you go and give them this. Okay, the Australian Boomerang, okay? You award it to them. Because, they keep trying to throw it into production, but it just keeps bouncing right back. So a great Australian symbol. I'm selling all of those outside, no, not really. But they're just other communication methods that we've used in the past. Email. I spent a lot of time writing a program so that when someone writes a nasty email, it can actually analyse that email and remove the nastiness. And this is an example of my little program. It's called the Sanitizer 2000. See, it's going to be hard to read, so I'll have to read it to you. So this is a message that says, Wally Yunong, once again I'm flabbergasted by the pathetic incompetence of your programming. The postcode checker is still failing for addresses in Victoria. Pull your finger out and get this fixed. We're sick of retesting your work, mate. Once again, you've messed up. You've messed up a great day. You then click on the sanitize button, performs a lexical analysis of all the nasty words. I've found some hostile language. It applies semantic transformations. It now becomes, Dear Wally, the Yunong is gone. I'm flabbergasted by the pathetic incompetence. That's gone. Once again, we've had the opportunity to test your programming. Okay, that's all nice. Pull your finger out, and so pull your finger out now becomes, please get this fixed. We're sick of testing your work becomes, and we will be happy to retest your work. Once again, you've messed up a great day becomes, mate, have a great day. And transformation complete. Now, it's a great bit of Visual Basic scripting to create that, and something I think that every testing team should have. Of course, it doesn't really exist. It was a complete fake. But the thing is, in spirit, I mean, that's what we sometimes need to do, especially when things are being written late at night and we are aggro. We need to maybe have a human do that until such time as we can develop a system that does it automatically like that.
Test 1 2. Test 1 2.
Oh,
test 1 2.
There,
test 1 2.
I wonder why that. Sorry about that. What I was going to demonstrate to you, hopefully, is our working environment. So you've got cubes here in the US the same way as we do.
Test 1 2. Test 1 2. Test 1 2. Test 1 2.
Sorry
test
about that.
1 2.
What that's meant to be was we've got to create some personal space for ourselves. Okay, so to keep the flies away in Australia, we have these hats, right? And the hat basically says buzz off to the flies. When we are doing some exploratory testing where we need a lot of concentration and we don't want to be interrupted, we wear the Australian cork hat because this gives me personal space. Okay? It's a symbol to people not to come and annoy me, I just have to put this thing out of the way so I can see what I'm doing with my exploratory testing. So another great Aussie symbol, the cork hat, personal space around the head. That thing I was playing you, that was my motivational iPod track for testing. So just test 1, 2, test 1, 2, so I can keep going with it, and I don't become demotivated. And that keeps me working hard all day. So just a few Aussie suggestions there for how to improve your productivity. Almost at the end of it. Communication tips. How much time do I have, Lee? Like -5 minutes or whatever? Oh, okay. Only another 400 slides to go. Thanks for staying with me. I used to work in journalism, writing a lot of articles and stuff, and we use this structure called the inverted pyramid, which you may have heard about. Now, my view is because people are inundated with so much written communication these days, it has to be short. In the same way as a newspaper article has to grab you within the first line, so does stuff that we write. People are getting deluged with email. I honestly have to spend hours doing email each day just looking for that 1 or 2 funny jokes that someone sent me, and it's just highly unproductive. So we can't be guaranteed someone's going to even read what we're writing. So you've got to basically hook them in with the what's in it for me. And a really, really important concept in communication is that when you're communicating as a communicator, you're not thinking about the message. What you are thinking about always is what the reaction of the person to that message will be, okay? So you're always thinking, so when they read this, what are they going to be thinking and what are they likely to do? Okay, it applies for any communication. So metrics, for example, you send some numbers up. When the boss sees those numbers, what are they going to think and what's the likely outcome? Will it be good for the testing effort or not? Because it might not be. It might result in some practices that aren't desirable. So you always think that. So inverted pyramid, this is how it basically looks. So what it basically is the idea of a pyramid where the width represents the importance of what you're saying. Okay, so along that bottom axis is the width is the importance, and along the vertical axis, the position in the story. So the most important stuff first, and then the less important stuff. The first paragraph in journalism is called the lead. First paragraph is the lead, and that lead has to get them in, quite often with the who, what, when, where, why being covered. An important way to write. Now, I just wrote my little headset complaint in that way. So I've got a title, no sound from left side of headset. Then my lead is, in seat 63E, there is no sound from the left side of the headset, okay? It is very short, very succinct, and describes exactly what the problem is. I then provide more information after the opening part, because they might not be reading anymore. They certainly need to know that. Tests suggest the problem is due to the left jack in the seat, as reversing the plug switch the audio to the right side. Okay, so I've elaborated. Then, if you want to give them a bit of a prod at the end, you can. The call to action, which is this could damage customer relations and create adverse publicity for the airline and needs urgent attention. As a bug advocate, it's really important that our bug reports, whether they are done using, like Quality Center or some other bug system with fields, or whether they're done informally or via a Word document or whatever, that they follow some similar model. Otherwise, there's a risk that they won't be actioned. The quality of our bug reports may well determine whether it gets fixed. It may be your only opportunity. Careful with communication. Sometimes we get the emphasis wrong. You've probably seen this sign that has the sharp edges. Do not touch the edges of the sign. And then in the small print, also the bridge is out. So maybe bridges out was a little bit more important than the other stuff about the edges. Nonverbal communication, laughing, important, just like the Kookaburra, and as we tend to try and do in Australia, it's good for your mood, good for your blood pressure, good for everything, makes everyone happy. The only unhappy people are the people who are in the next bay who are stressed and are hearing you laugh. So certainly when you laugh, you have to be a bit mindful of the people around you in our cubicle work environment and not be too happy. And it can also make people think you're slacking off. So there's a bit of a balance between laughing but not laughing too much. This is a funny story. We tried to get some sort of logo, for the team that I was working in. So my little daughter, little darling that she is, I had her draw me a bug, Said, darling, can you draw me a bug? And hours later, she drew me this bug. And I thought, the bug stops here. That'll be a good logo for us. This is a little picture of my daughter. I just thought I'd throw that in quickly. Little sweetheart. And so what happened was we used that as our logo. And I stuck it on my door. And there's my little door there. And you can see my name proudly displayed almost in the department's colours, in the department's colour scheme on the door there. The bug stops here. Then a bug slipped through. So I thought, okay, so maybe it was a bit strong saying the bug stops here. So you won't be able to see the slide, but I'll read it to you. So what I did then was I put this asterisk next to the bug stops here. I stuck the asterisk on, and underneath I had the asterisk referred to, and what that thing underneath actually says is aspirational statement only. This should not be interpreted to mean that bugs would necessarily stop here. So I had to kind of tone it down, you know, and the thing is, that was a good outcome. At first I was horrified. People were saying, oh, Tom, you know, you've stuffed up and all this and oh, whatever, you know, because it wasn't a serious issue. In terms of our risk analysis, the component that we deliberately didn't test should not have been linked to the other components, so really we wouldn't have done it any differently. Obviously now we know there is a link, but we didn't know that before. However, I want to make the controversial point that missing a bug can be good because it restores karma, it restores balance into the universe. You know, it gives them the chance to criticise us. It reminds developers that bugs can slip through, so don't just chuck your stuff over the wall thinking that we'll catch it all because we won't. And it raises the possibility of failures. You know, it reminds people that things can slip through. Now I mentioned here we are only talking about a minor bug. We're not talking obviously about a safety critical or mission critical issue, and we would never intentionally miss a bug because that would be just so wrong. But if one occasionally slips through, it humanises us as a group. It's great. We started putting disclaimers on our test reports. Within the time and resources available for testing, we believe the system is ready for production deployment. However, it should be noted that since exhaustive testing is impossible, and since testing can only demonstrate the presence of defects, not their absence, the system cannot be guaranteed to be defect-free. So you put that in an 8-point font at the bottom of every test report, okay, and you'll be fine. But this is part of our education mission because obviously this is true, and we really want people to know it. I just did a rap song, film clip.
We're really up against it because the project's out of time. We've just got a new release, not to test would be a crime. It's only been a one-line change that won't affect a thing. You won't need to regression test, we hear the people sing. But test we must and test we will. Crikey, we're no fools. And we can do this quickly with automation testing tools. The scripts are written, the scripts are run, and soon allay our fears by doing in 5 nanoseconds what would take 5-person years. When the system hits production, it gets critical acclaim, because testing saved the users a world of grief and pain. So we hope that you've enjoyed our little automation rap. We can stop your project turning into a heap of insurmountable problems.
So, yeah, it's quite a lot of work to do that. It's amazing we actually get any testing done because playing with animals, we're doing video clips. But there was a funny outcome in that, is that the guy who's sort of shaking his head, you know, actually bringing the work, he's a real developer. And a lovely guy. You know, honestly, we love him all, but the thing is he got in big trouble from his boss for participating in our subversive video clip and showing himself to not care about testing. But it was great to be able to do that. Conflict's good. Finding friends is better. Some of the allies that we can use, you know, obviously end users and other people in the team. How do we measure success? That's always a hard question. It's, again, a metric issue. Education, we have to educate our colleagues. And we've done that by putting the ISTQB principles of testing up on bits of paper around the testing area. And you know, it says, you know, number 1, testing shows the presence of defects. Number 2, exhaustive testing is impossible. Number 3, early testing, and so on. The advantage of that is that when we get into trouble, we can call out the number, okay? And we can point to the sign. And it's educating management and our users that the testing has limitations. You know, so if we miss a bug, we can call out number 2. Exhaustive testing is impossible. Number 2. So it's great. It makes life so much easier. Educating ourselves. I worked hard to get my certification. I really did. It was a huge effort. And I studied hard. And I'd recommend that everyone considers doing some sort of certification because, yeah, there's been lots said about certification. Oh, it's not a license and they can sue us. But really, no one is saying that. All we're saying is that it's some training. The advantage of certification is there's a test at the end, which means that if I send staff on the training, they may be more motivated to actually pay attention to the training, and I may have some sort of objective evidence that they actually have taken some of it in. So I'm fully behind certification. Obviously, some are better than others, but I've done ISTQB, and certainly it was a good introduction. Doesn't make you an expert, but it's certainly a good introduction. We had a funny situation. I made the whole team do it. I'll tell you, this is such a funny story. So I bought all these books from Amazon on testing. I got this enormous delivery of books, put them all on the shelves, made them all do certification. I ran sessions for them at lunchtime to review. I did practice tests, created practice tests for them to do on the internet. It was a huge effort, but it was really, really great for team bonding. But at the end, when we went and sat the exam on that fateful morning, we were so nervous about it, not everyone passed. And so from a public relations point of view, I then had this problem, you see, because obviously I want to say something because we've all done this. It's pretty good. We've raised our credibility. So I'm thinking I could say nothing, but that wouldn't be good. I could say something like only a few people didn't achieve certification, but that's a bit negative as well. Or I could say almost everybody achieved certification, which would come from the other direction. And after a lot of agonising, I finally found the line for the newsletter that I need is everybody achieved over 50%. And I omitted the fact that the pass mark was 65. So everybody achieved over 50%. It's a true statement. And it didn't leave anyone out. But I'll tell you, I had to think long and hard about how I was going to publicise that. I also think it's worth doing some IT training because it's so easy. I mean, this is the Hello World program in Visual Basic. I can actually run it. I wrote it last night in 5 minutes. So when I click this button here, a little box comes up that says Hello World. Is that an achievement in a night or what? I'm a programmer. Like, I'm now a coder, I'm going to demand a salary increase for sure because I can do Hello World. And honestly, it's so easy to learn how to do some basic programming. And the reason it's important is you don't have to do computer science to test, but the thing is, when you're arguing with other people, it does make it easier. When they say it's impossible to fix that, and you know that it's just a text change, you can actually come back and say, no, it's not. In fact, I'll do it for you right now. So I would encourage anyone to do further education in IT. Avoiding burnout, we've invested a lot of effort in the organisation because it's easy to burn out, and so we've done a lot of silly things. The thing that worked worst was the paintball competition because I didn't realise some people were so disliked that the rest of the team ganged up and really pummeled them with paintball. So be careful with paintball. Karaoke is also risky just because of some people's voices. You don't want to hear them. You want to have them testing but not singing. But celebrations we always were into in a bit. We had competitions going all the time. So this was to design a logo for our system testing section. They even did a coloured book. It was so beautiful. This is the local pub in Tuggeranong, where after a hard day testing, they go to PJ O'Reilly's to have a few drinks. And they coloured in these different animals representing the different people. So to me, testing is a really creative activity. And that's why I think it's important to actually stimulate the creative side of people's imagination. I even organised a play. Now, how ridiculous is this? I actually got my staff. I don't know why my staff even put up with me. I really don't, because I make them do these stupid things. So this was about PKI, which is, of course, public key infrastructure, which is used at Medicare Australia to protect, patient data. So we had this play that we put on at the theatre next door with spotlights and everything and costumes. It was based on the story of, what was it, Little Red Riding Hood or something? Yeah, Little Red Riding Hood. And the wolf was trying to intercept a secret. Yeah, Little Red Riding Hood is taking a secret recipe to the grandma, and the wolf's trying to intercept it. But because it's been protected with private and public keys and all that, they can't. So we ran through this scenario, we acted it all out, and we had a narration track that explained PKI. It was the first time that people really started to understand how PKI worked, which was a major achievement. We had about 100 people turn up from the department. So you can do all these little things providing you've got management support and you've got time. I'll probably skip that. Personal courage. You have to have courage to do this job. So this is the project manager after he's read your email on his BlackBerry about a potential delay, okay? And then this next slide that I've captured, this is when he's discussing it with you, okay? And then at the end of the story, this is how you feel. So it's a tough gig to be a tester, to do it well. I think testing has got an image problem, I really do. Because, we did a bit of a survey, a bit of a focus group thing. What do you think of when you hear test and people think of failing and school and driving test, dad yelling at me, a blood test and being scared. So pretty negative connotations with the word test. And then when we asked people, what about if someone was a tester? Oh, it'd be easy, boring, repetitive, mechanical, routine, important, anyone can do it. So unfortunately, because test carries this emotional baggage, I think it does make our role difficult, even though I know in the United States you've added engineer to it, but engineer's been added to so many careers. Now, isn't there like sanitation engineer and so many, everyone's an engineer, that the engineer perhaps loses its persuasive power. So we thought long and hard, and maybe quality facilitation professional might be a name for the future in the sense that it indicates a level higher than just testing and a greater contribution to quality, but that's still undecided. We wrote a testing manifesto. We got sick of the Agile manifesto thing dominating on the walls. You know, some people in Utah that were in the mountains and at a ski lodge, we couldn't afford that, so we just sat around the shores of Lake Tuggeranong in Canberra and we wrote the testing manifesto version 1.0. Primary aims to protect the organisation, developers and users from defective software. We respect the talents and capabilities of our developer colleagues and appreciate the complexities involved in the software development process. Similarly, we're grateful that our developer colleagues understand and value our testing activities, putting a few words in their mouth there. We are mindful of the fact that our colleagues are often working under substantial time and budget pressures, as we are too. We acknowledge that we also make mistakes. We seek to employ the most efficient and effective testing practices available to uncover issues. While we have no desire to harm, criticise or adversely affect our developer colleagues, we are nonetheless compelled to serve our primary aim. We'll report all issues dispassionately and factually, avoiding emotive expressions and aiming to avoid apportioning blame on individuals or groups where possible. If we've raised an issue in error, we will happily cancel it provided an evidence-based explanation is given. And we are proud to be working alongside our developer colleagues and the many other skilled project team members to achieve positive outcomes for all. So that's our little manifesto that we wrote, because there was one happening on the internet, I think, as a result maybe of a Eurostar conference or something, but never seemed to get off the ground. So we wrote our own one. The question is, can we save the world? Well, maybe not, but we can have a secret identity. And I will now reveal my secret identity here. I think James Barks said somewhere, don't be one of these, but I am. I'm an unashamed, a rabid quality fanatic. A rabid quality fanatic. Now, I'm never overtly a rabid quality fanatic. That's why I have to hide from the camera here so no one knows back at work. But the thing is, I think within our hearts, I think we have to be, if we take this job seriously, rabid fanatics. It's just we don't come across. We come across as nice, cuddly, warm people. But I'm hopeful that that you guys obviously would share that passion with me, that we care about quality. We don't care who's to blame, don't care whose fault it is. I honestly don't care, and it just annoys me when people think that, you know, I'm trying to prove I'm intellectually superior. I'm not. I don't care. I just want it fixed. I don't want to know whose fault it was. I'd like to prevent it happening in future if I can. You know, maybe we can learn something from it. But my passion is in, you know, helping to deliver systems that our end users won't be frustrated by. They'll enjoy using, that's going to make their lives better. I see it as almost a social change movement, and one that I'm proud to be part of. And thank you very much for your time.